Welcome back to our podcast. Um, this sustainability is sus. Um, with me, your co-host Gabriel Picard, and I'm on the line with Joshua from New England, and I'm open to other ideas for how to name this thing. But I'm really happy that we're doing this. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining me in this endeavor. The goal that we've had several goals. The goal that I've seen is to start talking about sustainability from a perspective. hmm, what is the perspective? How would you characterize the perspective, Joshua?
My perspective is I want to talk about it narratively. So I want to tell stories. And
Mm-hmm.
part
Mm-hmm.
of that is what you and I have in common is we embody sustainability. So you have sailed across the Atlantic by wind. That's not using fossil fuels. That is a very intense experience that takes a lot of commitment, a lot of time, and it's a sensory experience. And I bet that we could do a whole podcast on how that changed you. You could tell a story about that. But that's one aspect of it is this physical experience. There's an emotional component to that. And
Yeah.
then what I'm really after is I want to tell stories. And so I'm just going to tell one right now. When I started writing this TV show about 10 human beings raising one child together in a collapsing
Mm-hmm.
world, I began to feel a love greater than I had ever felt before. I cried a lot of times. In every episode of it that I've written, I have cried. And that didn't happen before. I would write things and I'd feel there was a lot of beauty in them. There was a lot of magic in them. Sometimes maybe there was something that was somewhat moving, but I wasn't moved to tears. It never felt like that was something I could do. It was always like some other artist can create something that would move me to tears, but I can't do that. I don't know how they do it. I don't have that in me. And this just erupted from inside me. So that's what that experience has been like and continues to be. And there are many more stories I can tell about the process of creating this show, which it's bigger than I am.
Yeah.
Why I want to talk with
So,
stories. Oh, go ahead.
hmm? Well, I was gonna say, well, you've mentioned now this TV show. And I think both of those are like the two anchor points I'd love to dig into. Like the first thing being like what kind of so you're doing this, you're working on a script, you're working on a concept, working on towards the production of this. But I think it's really grounded in the way you've been leading your life, right? Like and which I
Yeah.
would have said when you said like on the like sustainability on the basis of like stories, which I think is a really better way of saying what I would have said, which is like herder personal responsibility or something like that, right? Like starting with ourselves, I think, to some degree. Um, and you've done a shit ton of that in my book. Like starting off with like mm, just taking accounting of your carbon output of your footprint and
Yeah.
and changing the way you've been living, where you've been living, that sort of stuff. um so how about, do you want to give me like a very brief synopsis of what this show, like, what this show is about, how you got to it, and how you're kind of grounding that in your life.
I started writing the show because I was lonely. I wanted to have this community around me and of people who were also trying to live sustainably. I've dreamed of this and I've tried to create it in my life. And I actually it was at a very low point. Um, my ex had just broken off our relationship and she was spending all of her time using AI and I resented it and I was really unhappy with the carbon footprint of the AI stuff itself and it felt like she was disregarding my needs. Like here I am trying to homestead, trying to save the planet and you're just working at exact cross purposes to that. I did take it personally and I felt resentful and I also said, "Hmm, Joshua, you're feeling resentful. You're jealous that she's getting some emotional need met here." And so I said, I got to try using AI myself. Just I before I just write it off entirely, I should try using it. And I know I'm not very good at being brief in this story, but I just asked it to write a
That's
story
fine.
of 10 people raising a kid together because I that's my number of proportion I believe is I can go into reasons for that that if I were going to have a child I'd want it to be at 1/10 replacement rate. That would feel like I was respecting the boundaries of the planet and what's my share to do. And as I've realized over time, that's what it would feel like to be able to look my child in the eye and say, I know that I did right as a dad. I didn't take more than my share. I'm not just telling you don't take more than your share uh, with hypocrisy. I can actually look my kid in the eye and be someone who has lived by example, who's led by example there. So I had to write the story, and I felt like, wow, hey, this is actually good TV. This seems so simple and accessible. Like anyone could understand this scene where the parents are having that meeting saying, do we tell our kid why we're doing this? Is she too young? She's 5 years old now. Are we gonna, when do we tell her about the possibility of ecological collapse? When do we tell her that we're doing an experiment kind of and I was like, that doesn't seem hard to wrap your mind around. That seems like that's just good TV. Like it's got suspense to it. It's simple. And I had never really written something that simple. It's a really helpful discipline for me to be forced to make something for TV rather than for theater. Like theater is art. TV is not art. TV has to be entertaining. So that's how it got started and I discovered along the way of trying to find to do fundraising for it and build relationships with other organizations. I'm not the first person to come up with this idea, and in particular in relation to overpopulation, the Sabito methodology has been doing this for decades, and it's a brilliantly,
Mm-hmm.
carefully thought out thing. Yeah.
What is that about?
So Sabito, Miguel Sabito was
Uh-huh.
a soap opera producer and theater director, but he was producing soap operas in Mexico. And as I understand it, he noticed that as he traveled around the countryside, people were using the catchphrases from his soap operas. They were doing the hairstyles and the clothing. He said, wow, I have a lot of power. I should use it responsibly.
To
So
make
he
money.
created no, and he did not use it to make money. This is there are some people who do things that are genuinely actually effective altruism, and this is one of them. He said,
Yeah.
I'm going to make a soap opera about literacy, and in the final episode, this grandfather who was an adult who couldn't read has taken those classes. He's braved a lot of people giving him negativity, telling me, "Hey, you're too old. It doesn't matter. It's a waste of time. You're too
Hmm.
stupid to do it." and all of that. He's actually braved all of that. He's learned how to read, and now he picks up the letters that his granddaughter has written to him, and he can read them. And everyone's crying watching this episode. The
Right.
whole country is watching it. Everyone's crying. So many people signed up for literacy classes right after that. If I were good at remembering statistics, I'd be able to tell you what it was, but I want to say something like a 30% increase in enrollment in those and these were government programs they had. And
Hmm.
that's how he got started in doing this. And the next one was for family planning. The next soap opera was for family planning, and he evolved a whole discipline of storytelling that it's got to be 70% entertainment and 30% message. It's really not educational TV. People will
Right.
turn that shit off in 2 seconds. They don't want to watch educational TV. It's actual TV. And I've finally gotten to see the show that they made in America. It is a really good show. It sometimes seems a little like you're watching a teen drama show. So it's like, why would I watch this as an adult? And then there are moments where it is so fucking real. There's moments where the reality of somebody may have just gotten pregnant like in 2 seconds. That's their
Hmm.
whole life, because it's
Hmm.
it's it's more, it's not so much about overpopulation as just about teen pregnancy, but that's a really important aspect of this. Um and just the to be supporting a culture in which we give thought to these decisions, in which we have real conversations about contraception, um, about communicating in relationships. I mean, even if you're going to say, I don't believe in contraception, I only believe in abstinence, you still need to listen to your kid. You still need to have communication with them. You can't just
Hmm.
say, be abstinent, and then expect that's going to work. At the very least, what a TV show does, it allows people to look forward in time and see the consequences of what's likely to happen if they keep on a course that they're on, and then be able to
Hmm.
make their own decision with some foresight. And it's this methodology gets through the rational defensive stuff that we have with our heads. It gets to our hearts. It's a way for us all to connect in emotion. So beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing, and it's I feel it is very uniting. I like to think that all of us in my country who are on either side of these very bitter cultural divides and political divides could still come together through storytelling, and we'd be able to at least listen to the story, even if we can't listen to the statement about it. Like, I this is the conclusion. This is what this story means. I'm right, you're wrong. That's one half of things, but the other half is, well, this is just what happened. This happened, and then this happened, and then the consequence was that, and you can take what
Hmm.
you will from
Hmm.
it. It feels connecting, and it's felt so much like what I need for nourishing my heart at this time in my life.
So, so the scene is basically you're having a rough time. You're in your homestead, and which so you've I've seen some of your ducks, right?
Yeah.
And and you're doing your permaculture, and I think a lot of people know that sense of like they're trying to do something with intention, and often if you do something with intention, you're going to end up in a situation where where you feel like poorly supported or alone or it's something like that, right? And then what you're turning to is um, kind of like it seems like an artistic expression that mm, that integrates that. Is that a good way to put it?
It integrates it with me and you. I'm telling my story about it.
Hmm.
rather than arguing with you about why you should do it too. It's it's started me in this new direction of really trying to make a lot of my airtime be telling stories,
Yeah.
and listening stories is the other part of it. Asking, so what was it
So,
like for you when you, yeah.
yeah. So the story that you came up with was sort of this a ragtag team of 10 adults. They joined forces to raise one child together. Um, so is that a lifestyle that you think we all should espouse?
I don't I don't think you should try this at home, kids, exactly in this way, but
Hmm.
I want to have this feel like this is a way that you could do it, and this would be fine too. I want us to, I mean, it is somewhat hyped up, but would I do it with 10 strangers? No. I think that's probably not the best way to go about it. I think, though, if you have some siblings and you have some friends who are like, I don't think I really want to have children, I'm just not sure, and you have um, some neighbors who similarly are just, you know, man, finances are tight. I would really like to have a kid, but it just doesn't seem responsible. I'm going to wait. Why not share some of that? And I want to I want to tell people on the advantage of that.
Hmm.
They find it is easier some in some ways. They're like, wow, wait a minute, we lucked out here. Like this was actually really a smart thing. Like this is like, ride sharing instead of owning a car. This is like just nobody has to be the person who is up all night long every night. But the other side of it is I have found myself feeling, and I see this for a lot of parents. There's this desire to be on the safe side. Like, okay, if I
Hmm.
can do anything to make sure my kid is safe, I'm going to do it. I'm going to 10 times it. I'm going to do 10 times or whatever that is. There's always the possibility something can go the way you didn't expect. You can have twins. So maybe you need to have some buffer in
Sure.
there. You
Hmm.
can have one of the parents, one of the 10 people can die. And this number 10 is not like it's not a magic number. I think it's my number for me personally, and I think it's a good number for TV. I can't tell anyone else what their number is, but hey, if you can have 10 people, sure. Like if that's easily accessible to you, like you can talk to 10 friends and now you've got a group and they're like, "Hey, I want to do this. Let's do this together." And like we'll see how it goes. Maybe in the year 2030 things are actually much more stable and the climate is really stable and we're like, "Hey, we can have another kid at that point." Then, then it could be another discussion, but like for now, um it feels really abundant to have there be a village built first, to have there be consent, and have it be a large village, not just a village of three adults, not just five, but really enough redundancy that there can be several bad things that have happened to you all in a row, and you're still fine. You are still giving this kid the best life you possibly can, a better life than you had in some ways,
So,
in spite of the
so
world. Yeah.
yeah.
No, go ahead.
So this speaks sort of like this village, and I think it speaks to, from what I've seen, a desire in many parents, as well as a desire that I know from not having a child, right? To sort of be involved, be connected. And I get some of that with my nephews and my niece. And I see I there's sort of And of course, this is not a scenario like we don't have like a group of 10 people that we can call up to interview them. Like, how did this actually go? So we're imagining this scenario, right? Um, there's kind of two things that come to mind. One is that uh, how when I look at my relationship with sort of my nephews and my niece, how I've with my vagabonding lifestyle, I've sometimes been very present, sometimes not been that present, right?
Yeah.
And the next question also being like, if you're co-parenting in such a large group, how now I'm thinking of the German word and not the English word. How verbindlich, how how responsible are you basically, right?
Yeah.
Mm, like how much of a because there's no legal adoption process for this, right? So you don't have rights for this
Yeah.
child connection, and you also don't have a mechanism for enforcing responsibility. And I'm seeing it in my circle of friends, right? Just a couple with a child, it not working out, then breaking up. How does this work with 10 people?
If there's a breakup, wow. Well, I think that it's one person who breaks up. So one of the dads leaves early on, and it's for no noble reason. He
Hmm.
just he's
Like
he
in the
gets
story.
in the story. He's chasing the other woman, um and he's polyamorous, but really he just kind of is just abandoning his girlfriend of many years because he has a problem, and he goes on a journey with that. And in the story, he has to work on his shit. He comes back, and their
Hmm.
daughter Sage sees him and just cries and runs to him, "Daddy, you're home!" And that's one of those things that made me cry. I did not see that coming, but the character showed me like she misses him. She was one when he left. She didn't have like
Hmm.
a verbal relationship with him or anything. That it's no less in there, and and after that, he's really solidly there because he's clear this is more important, and this is who he
Hmm.
wants to be. It's not. And so you're bringing up a really good point, which is that we want our individual freedom, and we don't want that toxic relationship with that person where it doesn't work anymore. There's
Hmm.
really good reasons for
Hmm.
those things, and he has good reasons why Marisol is being a bitch, and why it's no fun, and she's trying to be controlling him. Yeah, all of that is kind of true, but there's also what is the larger picture, and so that's not addressing the legal stuff. The legal stuff, I'm haven't really figured out a lot of how that's going to get handled in the show, other than that there is a
Sure.
bit of, well, the lawyers are kind of, everything's broken. So you try and get a lawyer, and it turns out you got conned, and that you're not even getting a lawyer. You just put down a $3,000 retainer in a moment of crisis, and that person just took your money, and now you're like, oh, isn't there something to enforce that they get disbarred? And well, except that the other lawyers who are doing that, they're also in on this thing, and it's like, oh geez. So that's a situation they run into, of just larger systems that used to be dependable. Now there's just so much scamming that you can't really trust stuff. um that's So that is not a whole answer to your question either. There was a
Hmm.
really good discussion of this just yesterday on the Auntie Bulletin. So I would recommend for listeners, if you can find the Auntie Bulletin on Substack. I'm pretty sure you have to pay to get the paid subscription to her thing to actually watch the whole
Yeah.
video, but they talk about some of those legal things. The fact is, it's good to, in an ideal world, we wouldn't use law to compel a parent to still show up for their kid or maintain a relationship with the kid. Like that is really but we're not in an ideal world. We're in a real world. It's good to
Yeah.
have laws that do support this, and that's something that, there are precedents in some ways in worker owner co-ops. But there's a lot about the law that is very much baked in for individualism. Our inheritance laws, I just heard on a different podcast recently, are basically based on 500-year-old British laws, and very little has been changed. And still, the default is that the money goes to the oldest son. I mean, what are we doing? It's crazy how long it takes for laws to get changed. If like before our country even started here in America, that's where that law comes from. Like, wow. But there are people working on this. And the fact is, we do create the laws. They are supposed to serve us. We don't actually have to be their slaves. So ultimately, we can have a conversation about that and change that. I'm not going to pretend that like there's a panacea here, though. It's a sticky thing, but I would say the law itself is also not a panacea. It's not gonna like, if it forces someone to stick around, that doesn't force them to be a nice person to their child, to not be abusive, to not be emotionally absent. Like, so it's complicated. It'd be a great conversation to have a lot longer conversation of, but
Sure.
I think at this moment I don't have a lot more to add. And that the thing
Yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah.
exhibit on Substack, was probably covered a lot better than I can. And so, by
Okay.
the way,
Yeah.
she is an auntie. I'll just say for context, she is an auntie. So she lives next door in a little three-house co-housing group with friends, and she does what she calls
Mhm.
load-bearing support for the child or children. I think it's just one child of her friends, where she picks them up after school each day and hangs out with them while they do their homework, and gives them a snack and all of that. And that's load bearing in the sense, if she suddenly disappeared, they would really feel the loss of that, as a load bearing support got taken away. And so it's really solid. So there's a great step forward there in what's being shown to the world through her Substack bulletin,
Uh-huh.
and really, really thoughtful, wonderful person. I wish that she had been my aunt. That would have been such a wonderful support. Lovely, lovely person with a really warm, beautiful heart, and very thoughtful and really lucid analysis. So highly recommend that.
And that is the Auntie
The
blog?
Auntie Bulletin, yes.
The Auntie Bulletin. We can put it in the show notes. Yeah. Um, so to pull back the aperture a bit. So you have this idea, which is informed, I think, by the carrying capacity of our planet and how many people we want to have, particularly if we're not doing industrial agriculture, which I think by next year, this world will wake up to. Uh, there's a good chance that the world will wake up to the fact how much the number of nutrients that we have available as a world population is very much dependent on pretty complex industrial process throughout the world, because the Strait of Hormuz, of course, is closed and a lot of the fertilizer comes through there, right? Um, so that's kind of, I think, the carrying capacity, the footprint that we each human has, divided by how much what the world can carry, divided by how many people we have. That's I believe the idea behind that, right?
I didn't know about the carrying capacity in any real specific
Mm-hmm.
detail when I started thinking about population differently, though. It was from a spiritual book, actually, that talks about the future, and it says the population is going to drastically drop, among many other things. The emphasis is on human evolution. You human beings, they say, you're growing up as a species. You have outgrown a lot of these forms of industrial age things. And in order for your evolution to continue, you've got to let go of them. You can't keep trying to put more money into them and energy into them and try to keep them going. You have to let them go. And you've got to let go of an assembly line reproduction of babies mentality as a part of that. or a mindless reproduction of babies where it's just romanticized. It's like, oh well, this is going to fill the void. It'll fill up your life. You have a kid, and now the relationship, now the marriage is fixed. I think everyone nowadays knows that that's not a full answer, but there's also still a lot of, but maybe it is. We have both voices going, I think, in our heads. So a part of what the book talks about is a general sense of um, idea of balance and the need to listen to what the earth is telling us, to listen to those signals, but it's not presented
Mhm.
in so mathematical a term as the scientists talking about carrying capacity. So learning about that stuff later that corroborates what the book says, um, it's been validating, but I don't want to pretend that I just came up with this idea out of that head knowledge of like, okay, carrying
Mhm.
capacity, because nobody even agrees on what amount that is. There's different numbers that you'll see: 2 billion, 3 billion, 1 billion. One guy's like
Right.
600 million people. That's what we can have now. He's an extremist, and so and it depends. How much is each of those people consuming? How are they getting that? How are they doing that consuming? I'm not consuming less heat than a person who heats with oil. I just am using a renewable thing. I'm using wood. Well, it is
Mhm.
kind of chilly. I have to work on perfecting this thing, but I'm using a more efficient system. Um, so how are we consuming? I have to do a bit more work to do that. It's like if you ride a bike instead of driving, it's more work, but your return on investment is very
Mhm.
high. Um, your carbon emissions is basically zero if you are biking. So there's all of these ifs, and I don't. What I'm what has been clear for me is that I don't know the answers to all of these mental level questions in the way that I might think I know. We all have to figure this out together. That's what I really am getting to. All of us, 8 billion people here, we are one family. We want to try and have a family meeting and decide what are we going to do. A lot of us think we are in overshoot. A lot of us don't. Okay, so how do we come to an agreement that works for everybody given those two contradictory viewpoints? And I think if we all say, look,
Mhm.
let's do something for the kids, let's be on the safe side. We can still have lots of stuff. We can still have a large population compared to most other species. But let's reel it back a bit. Let's be more like adults and a little bit less like teenagers who think we're invincible. That's what I feel we all could agree to if we really, really settle in and we're not in this fight.
So what I think that brings us towards is sort of, I think where you started, where you're saying like you're interested in narratives, and you said again like, yeah, this like carrying capacity, there's theoretical concepts there, and they can be matters of debate. And as individuals who are acting in a social setting, we kind of have to work to some degree with mm, notions that are beyond the scientific method, right? Like there's no um, and this applies to all politics, the political economy, to all these matters actually, where um, there is there is no randomized control trial. There is no reproducibility that we have. We can have some scientific inputs, but perhaps um, beyond that, the way I sort of see it is um, we are trying things out. We're running non-scientific experiments in our lives, and we're talking about them. Right? We're coming up with our perspectives, and that's I think where the narrative sort of comes in. And um, you talk about this like how do we arrive at a consensus on what to do? Now I think that is a process that you know, we have an inherent sense of truth, but we also have an inherent ability to ignore that. And where I can only say, like, well, that's then the trial by fire, right? Because the ignorance, the denial, it's, you know, I would believe that it just simply will not last, because it's almost a tautological definition, right? Approaches that are not sustainable will not be sustained.
I
So yeah,
well, you
uh,
said a lot. Did you want to finish your thought there?
no, I think I sort of drifted off into me editorializing more than interviewing, but I think um, I think it's a good point. But I think that's basically the point that I was going to make. That like, um, and you mentioned this sort of like, I think there's just this whole spectrum between, which often has been the way in which we approach topics such as climate change, which is a the science. Yeah, like how often have we read the statistics as to how many scientists, what percentage of scientists believe that climate change is real? I don't think that's gonna, as they say in German, make the pig fat, right? That's
Yeah.
that's not what's gonna like save the situation here. Um, yeah, and
I
so I
want
think
to
that yes.
I want to see the family duke it out as a family. I want to see them arguing, letting go of the argument to try and listen to each other more, and then eventually coming to some kind of consensus they can live with. Consensus does not mean we have the answer, total answer. It just means for now we're agreeing we can consent to this. I want to say
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if anyone is hate watching this, hate listening to this, or something, like you're coming to this because you feel that your viewpoint is invalidated by people who talk about climate stuff or environmental stuff or population. I don't look down on you. That is not who I am. I might go there sometimes. That's my shortcomings. I'm not trying to be that person. We're in this together, and I don't know everything, and you don't know everything either. We got to figure this out together, and that's kind of what I want to say to people locally around me in my town. Though I have not brought up these big hairy topics that much, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't figure this out all alone, and scientists can't figure it out all alone either, because there's always another silo that kind of changes the conversation. For a stupid example, kind of silly example, what if the sperm count crisis turns out to get much bigger? Well, then a lot of this conversation is a moot point. That's a
I mean, we already are seeing populations drop, right? Like,
yeah.
or yeah, we are already seeing, and that may well be a bunch of other cultural factors for sure than just sperm count.
And I would
But
like us, yeah, I want us to go voluntarily with the reduction of population, as cold as that phrase might sound. I want us to go voluntarily with the changes that are being forced on us, and find a
mhm.
way to have it make our lives better instead of worse. I believe that we can do that. It is a matter of perspective, mindset, whatever you want to call it, but I do think we can do that.
Now you take a rather upbeat view. I think in life and also in the stories that you're crafting of this, I often take a somewhat dimmer view on how this works. Where like I just point to the the most effective population reduction was the collapse of the Soviet Union
Hmm.
and the immiseration that it brought with it, right? I mean, just it is like a the biggest peacetime collapse in
Hmm.
like in in our like the biggest peacetime collapse in our century, right? Or recent centuries. I don't know about the Black Death, right? But the collapse of the Soviet Union was a really important example where you get uh, just a lot of people deferring having children because there's there's people having access to contraception and deferring having children, mm, because the economic outlook is so bad. And then um, I think in general, depression and malaise happening, right? And like lots of deaths of despair and old people dying with their next cold, with their next flu, with their next whatever. All of those put together, that was a potent reduction in population right there, and I could see something like that happening in Western Europe as well at some point, say, or in certain countries in Asia that are very dependent on the Gulf region for their energy inputs. If their economies were to collapse within, the next few years, you could see something like that happen as well. Mm. And so it can be a rather painful process, but
Can I respond to that?
it doesn't have to be, is I think what you're saying, right?
Well, that's very painful. What you just told me, I didn't know that story is what main thing I wanted to say. And wow, I mean, I knew that the Soviet Union collapsed, and I know someone who lived through that, and they moved to the countryside and had to
Hmm.
figure out how to grow their own food. He didn't mention about the population collapse and elders dying from a simple cold. Like, and that is heartbreaking, and I don't want to minimize.
But it's hidden. It's much more like people sort of slink away, right? And it's similar to how like a lot of people died during COVID, and it's sort of just it, it has a different feel to it than a war, right?
What I want to get at here is that I I'm thinking in terms of narrative and in terms of a family working out what's the best decision for us.
Hmm.
And some of those family members include in their criteria, how are we impacting the rest of the world? Not all of them. Some of them couldn't give a shit about that, or most of the time they don't think about it. But they hear, hey, my co-parent cares about this. And I care about that
Hmm.
person. I care about my kid. And they want to teach some values to our kid. And that's not a bad value. Caring about the world, caring about the spotted owl, okay. Like, I don't care about the spotted owl. I don't even know what it is, says Andre. But fine. Okay, I can live with that. Like, it's not a big deal. And clearly my kid cares about the spotted owl, and I don't want to change that about her. I don't, I want her to be who she is. This is who she is. She cares about
Hmm.
things that I just don't. It's beautiful. We're different. This is the magic of we have this new person in our lives. uh and so, like, what I'm kind of pointing towards is a decentralization of this decision making, where I think each family kind of sorting this out together, among themselves, and then maybe they share with other families around them, hey, this is what we're doing, and how is it going with you? That, again, it's sharing our stories rather than our statistics. Statistics can be, or in addition to our statistics, let's say,
Right.
sharing from a heart kind of place. I think that that's what I'm drawn to, because as you were talking about consensus, I really felt, I don't mean for us to just take a vote as a world population, like one vote. Now we're
Hmm.
always committed to this idea. Like, that feels really heavy. What feels right to me is much messier and more like we stumble a couple of steps forward. We're just getting through this thing the best we can, but maybe we can have an idea that we are going somewhere with this. Tolstoy wrote about the Napoleonic War. Like, it wasn't just some great man making a decision and everyone followed it, and that's how Napoleon was defeated. It was a bunch of people just saying, "Ah, I'm I got to burn down my crops here because it's going to work better
Hmm.
for me." And, oh, my neighbor's doing it. I don't remember the details, but it was very messy. It's like it's but there is sort of some method to that madness. I see us all working that out, and again, connecting through story, not just through statistic, then
Yeah.
like using, and it's also a brain science thing. It is, we have different areas that there is a mental thing, and there's an emotional thing, and a primal thing, different
Uh-huh.
brains. I guess I'm not a brain scientist, but they are there, and they do different things. And we have a society that has really focused on this as like, this is going to make all the decisions and this is going to drive things, and it just doesn't work that way. I think we all know that.
And so I think this brings me to actually back to a question that popped up for me at the beginning of this episode, where I hadn't thought really about what really this was about. And um I think I could formulate it a lot better now, where I would say, again, as in some other endeavors, this is about, I think for me, just giving support to those who care in some way, mm, and those who could care, right? Uh, by um, by having our voices and maybe some other voices on, um, to to do what you said, just to speak about stories from a sustainability perspective. Yeah, I think that sort of is what I would how I would conceive of it, what this could be about. Yeah.
I I feel it is giving support to those who care, and especially for the person who feels that they're overly overburdened by the pressure to act like they care, but they're burned out and they're just like, I just want to have a kid. Is that too much to ask? Like, this is a basic thing. Like, nobody's asking the ducks to stop reproducing. Like, what the hell? Get out of my sex life. Get out of my reproductive choices. Like, my freedom. For that person also to feel cared about, also to feel
Hmm.
included in this, and be respected and given the dignity of, I think you're ready to make this decision. I just want us to have a conversation first. I just want us to all, and I think this is something that's already happened. Like, uh people who've grown up in a more conservative and rural area in America often have had this experience where everyone's mom and dad, like a while ago, maybe more recently, it's not as much, but where they grew up, when they grew up, they could go over to anyone's house and just, with
Hmm.
their friend, and they would just get dinner, and they called other parents, mom and dad. Like, this is
Hmm.
what someone told me, and it rings true. It's how I feel about other adults that I imprinted on as a kid. I didn't realize I felt this way until I wrote this show. It's actually shown me things about myself. So it doesn't become a right left issue, really. It's I want everyone to feel cared about um in
Hmm.
their decisions, and just that if we have a story that gives us some kind of a mirror, that we watch it on TV and we like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way, but I totally feel what that character is feeling right now. It can make a space for a conversation that a scary news clip can't, I think, because then we're in fear brain. Scary news clip.
Yeah.
Oh, icebergs melting. Irrelevant news clip. Why do I care about that? I mean, we're going to go to that. We're going to tune it out. Like, oh, that's silly and childish to care about those things. No one can do about it anyway. The water's been poisoned in terms of trying to carry those messages, even though there's an emotional thing there, but it's, even that is just kind of where we've been numbed to it. um I do believe
Yeah.
that everyone cares. I believe that is a starting point somewhere deep down, and I know a
Hmm.
lot of people act like they don't. I'm not saying that we're all angels in how we conduct ourselves. I am certainly not myself, but
I
to
think you do pretty well, Joshua.
you're very kind, but I'm not. And like you were talking about indifference and denial, I can go to indifference and denial too, same as anyone else. It's I'm not any different. Stories help me. Connecting with
Hmm.
other people helps me. Connecting with spirit helps me. Um, and just sort of somewhat stubbornly believing I'm an American, not an Americant. Anytime it looks like there's two choices, hey, is this possible or not? I'm not going to be able to figure it out with my head. If I just try taking another step forward, even if it looks all completely impossible, totally futile, well, then I'm going to find out something I didn't know before. I'm going to find out more of the story. And if I don't do that, I'm not going to find out more. It's very simple in that way. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is a decent sort of point to wrap up this part of the story, I think, where um, there's other stuff we can touch on. There's like our personal experiences with our carbon footprint. Uh, I have connecting thoughts on stories and like religion and ritual and just how I think we can get through the mess that's coming, the hard times, whatever. So there's lots of stuff to touch on there, and I'm really grateful for you presenting some of your ideas on sustainability and the sort of emotional connection, the storytelling on that. So, if people want to learn more about this project, um, is there anything you'd like to plug at this time? I know it's still very much in development, but is there something to follow along?
Yeah, I will put my email
And we
in
can put it in the show notes,
in
right?
the show notes. I'll put the link to my website, but it's hard to read a whole URL out. So I'll just say if you want to email me at this point, if this something sparked for you about this, or you really hate it, you want to debate it with me in a constructive way. But I actually do want to hear criticisms of this too, because that helps me learn what I haven't learned yet. I haven't discovered. It's been some of the most helpful thing. So a kid with 10 parents, number 10, 10, a kid with 10 parents at gmail.com. That's a kid with 10 parents at gmail.com is my email address. And I want to say, I really look forward to hearing you tell a story next time we do this, Gabriel. You have stories that I really want to hear that I've never actually gotten to hear. And I realized that as we were talking about, and I like sailing and your relationship with your nephew and niece and things like that come to mind. But we'll save that so people have to tune into episode 2 if they want to get to hear those stories.
When they have to.
When they have to.
All right. Well,
and thank you,
Joshua, thank you very much.
Thank you for making a space for asking questions, because I feel like I'm just still giving birth to this, and it's I need help to draw it out of me, to know how to explain and share the emotions of it. It needs help, and thank you for helping.
That is really my pleasure. And I think you are quite inspiring in how you approach these kind of things.
I appreciate that.
And
it's bigger than me. It's not me doing it.
What was that?
It's not me doing it. It's just coming through me. It's all of us. It's all of us.
Cool. All right. Well, see you all next time. Thanks very much, Joshua.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.